David here with Figboot on Pens, and today I have for you something I felt was rather intriguing. I have always been fascinated by pens with eggshell as well as Raden. Typically, pens with those materials, especially the combination of those materials, are very expensive. Hundreds, if not several thousands of dollars. So when I was approached by a company who asked if I would care to review one of their pens, I checked out their offerings on their website and saw that they offered several Eggshell and Raden pens priced between around $150 to $250, which was rather alarming. I wanted to see the difference between these pens and those being offered by more luxury brands, and would it be equivalent? The name of the company is Delmoon, and the pen I have for you today is one of those Eggshell and Raden models called the Avitar. What I am going to do today is go over the parts and features of this interesting offering, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. There are certainly a number of things on both sides of that ledger. There were some things that concern me as well as some pleasant surprises. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to the good folks at Delmoon for providing the pen you will see today for review. Delmoon is a company based out of New Delhi, India. There, they have a retail location where they sell both international as well as Indian brands. Here's a picture of the exterior of the building where they're located. Pens Point is the name of the shop, and Delmoon is the name of their house brand. Back in 2021, they began manufacturing their own pens. The pens were received well by their customers, and so in April of this year, they decided to begin making them available internationally. The pen arrives in this box, and the sleeve slides off, and inside we have this box, which lifts open. Inside, there wasn't any documentations, but what we do have is this sleeve. It has a Velcro top, and inside we have a pen. This is the Delmoon Avitar. The company name, Delmoon, in Hindi means Delhi's moon. The pen is made from resin and has twisting applications of both Raden and eggshell. The company offers a number of different non-eggshell and Raden models as well, but in regard to the eggshell and Raden, they offer those in several different varieties, as well as some with urushi and some with not, and in varying patterns. In regard to the pen I have in hand, before we get into the parts and features of this pen, let's take a closer look at both the eggshell and Raden. Here's a look at the eggshell. There's a number of things going on here that stood out to me. First of all was the color. The eggshell used on this pen is uniformly stark white. Now, I realize that different eggshell can be used to create different pens, but just in comparison, here's what I'm used to seeing in eggshell. Something with a bit of discoloration. I asked the company about this, and they stated that this was intentional, and they selected the pieces to have more of a uniform palette. Next up, I noticed the thickness of the pieces. That was something which stood out to me because typically the eggshell is set into a black lacquer or urushi, and in the case of the Delmoon, it's set into a clear lacquer. You could see here in a microscope shot of my Mr. Cypress eggshell pen that you really don't see the thickness of the shell here, but in the Delmoon you can. Something else I noticed about the resin on the Delmoon was an abundance of bubbles and other random debris. I noticed some spots of what looked like dirt or debris, as well as a few fibers or hairs embedded in the resin. But the bubbles were very noticeable. When you are setting resin, you really need to do so under pressure so that those bubbles can work their way to the surface. But in the case of this pen, I don't see that was a technique they used. The last thing about the eggshell is the randomness. What I mean by that is that with most eggshell pens, you can see that there are cracks where the pieces were broken and placed next to each other with intention. In the Delmoon model, you see very little of that intentional arranging, and it's more like they just had the pieces and then just placed them wherever on the barrel and the cap. It's more like they had all of the pieces and then just placed them wherever. You can even notice here where some of the pieces aren't lying flat. They're just angled up a bit. Minor details like this can be the difference between a $1,500 pen and one offered at $250. Okay, in regard to the Raden, I think it does look nice, though you can see this area here has a number of bubbles in the resin as well, which is a bit disappointing. Some of the ends of the material are a bit ragged and uneven, but not every Raden pen has perfectly shaped pieces. Here's what the Raden looks like under a microscope. I noticed the ridging on the sides and wondered if this was almost something like scissor marks. I decided to compare the Raden to that found on a high-quality pen from Pilot, and I found it interesting that the Raden from Pilot also had the same types of marking on the side, so that must be common. Okay, let's take a look at the parts and features of this pen. The top of the cap is ever so slightly rounded. This transitions into the clip. It's stamped with the company name. Now, the end of the clip is something I have never seen on a pen before. You can see here that it's a larger piece affixed to the end of the clip, but it's larger than the rest of the clip, so there's a gap there on the bottom. While the clip can easily be inserted into material of varying thicknesses, when you remove the clip, that rather sharp underside has a tendency to get hung up on a bit of the material. I wish that it was either crimped or maybe smaller in order to fit better to alleviate that issue. The cap angles up until about this point, where then there is a swooping decline and a small step down of a transition to the remainder of the barrel. Here you can make out several of the bubble issues there. Some larger bubbles on the lower left and smaller ones around the eggshell. The barrel then angles up slightly before quickly tapering down, and the end of the barrel, like the top of the cap, is very slightly rounded. Something that annoyed me a bit was that the patterning from the cap to the barrel doesn't necessarily match up. It's about 1/4 of an inch off from where it should be if the twist continued at the natural progression. The cap twists off with 1 1/4 rotations, and underneath we have a number 6 stainless steel Yovo nib. It's available in either fine, medium, or broad, and is laser engraved with a pattern which, it reminded me of a level of the video game Q*bert. I might be dating myself with that reference. You see kids back in my day, we would go to these things called arcades where we would trade in our dollars for these things called quarters or sometimes tokens, and we'd play video games. Before there were larger arcades, we had like smaller ones, typically in strip malls, and that's where all the kids would hang out. I grew up in San Diego, more specifically Mira Mesa. In our neighborhood, we had 2 local arcades. There was one up on Mira Mesa Boulevard called The Forest, and then there was one up on Camino Ruiz closer to my house, but I can't remember what that one was called. I really wasn't into Q*bert. I was more into like Defender and Tempest and Dig Dug, and then there was even Tron and a game called Kix, that was Qix as well, that I liked. Okay, enough video game talk. Here is a look at the plastic feed. The section only angles up slightly, about 1 millimeter from beginning to end, where you have the threads and a medium step up to the remainder of the barrel. I find the pen to be comfortable in the hand. It's fairly light, and I like the girth of the section. It's plenty long enough to use unposted. The cap barely posts. You can get it on there if you apply a bit of pressure, but it's not very secure, so I would suggest using this pen unposted. This is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts standard international cartridges, and a converter is provided. With the solid resin construction with the appropriate amount of silicone grease, you could use this as an eyedropper. Delmoon pens are available from the company website. I'll put a link to it in the notes below. I'll also put a link directly to this specific model, which sells for 21,000 rupees, which equates to around $250. As I mentioned up top, that price is extraordinarily low for an Eggshell and Raden pen. But do the flaws I mentioned overshadow the low cost and nice looks of this pen? This is what I think. There are quirks with the Eggshell, and the clip design is questionable, and the exterior resin is littered with bubbles and debris. But the good news is, to the naked eye, most of these things aren't really visible. At an initial glance, this pen looks pretty sharp. And the Yovo nib that it comes with performs as expected, as you'll see here in the writing sample. If you are expecting exquisite craftsmanship, this is not the pen for you. If you are looking for an entry-level Eggshell and Raden pen, then you're probably not going to find anything less expensive than this pen. There are some pens with only eggshell from Delmoon that sell for as little as $150, which is incredible. But the lower cost also comes at a lower quality, which isn't surprising. For its current price, I don't feel this pen is unreasonable. If they were charging $1,000 and trying to pass this off as a luxury offering, then I would have problems with that. But with the very inexpensive price, there are some trade-offs in regard to quality and craftsmanship. This is an intriguing offering, and I'd be interested to see how this brand progresses. They have a wide variety of models on their website, and I'd be interested to check out some of their other models as well. Okay, now it is a time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. Okay, here we go with some size comparisons for the Delmoon Avitar. I just wanted to give you another close-up look at that eggshell and the Raden. And then also, you know what? Well, here, let's do size comparisons, and then I'll show you some other comparisons as well. This is with another eggshell pen I have, which is, I believe it's the eggshell number 9 from Mr. Cypress. Here it is with a Raden pen. This is the Raden Water Surface from Pilot, which is a vanishing point. And then finally, I have a brand new pen from Tassia, which I'll be reviewing here in the near future with a number of other pens. This is a very nice offering that has some eggshell in the lotus flowers there, as well as Raden in the water. This is a very beautiful offering, but that is what it looks like in comparison to the Delmoon. I don't know why I took that away. In regard to some other size comparisons, this is what it looks like with a Pelikan M805 and a Mont Blanc 149. And then here it is with a Lamy Safari. Just in regard to some side-by-side comparisons, we'll see how close I could get here. This is what I was kind of talking about, how it's smaller pieces that are less intentionally arranged, and they are more stark white as opposed to the discoloration that you might see. You even see some discoloration on this Tassia pen if you look up close with with magnification. So you can just see the differences in those pieces and how they are more like solid solid pieces that were then cracked and intentionally laid, as opposed to the more random nature of these. In regard to some uncapped comparisons, this is what it looks like with the Lamy Safari, and then the Mont Blanc 149, and then here it is with the Pelikan M805. Here we go with the writing sample for the Delmoon Avitar. This is a medium stainless steel nib, and the ink I'm using is one of my favorites, which is Lamy Dark Lilac. This is what the ink looks like. This was one of their limited edition inks a number of years ago. I was lucky to get my hands on. I'll be sorry once it's all gone. It's very difficult to find right now. But in regard to some other colors that I enjoy, this is what it looks like with Birmingham's Andy Warhol Pop Art Purple, as well as Leonardo Purple. It's a little bit darker than both of those. This is what Lamy's bottles look like, they are interestingly shaped and then have a little ball here on the bottom as an ink reservoir. And then it's also nice to have some little tissue here or some paper in order to wipe your nib. I will say this is something that is always nice to have, but I don't know if I really ever use it that much. I'm always afraid that I'm just going to like use it and then run out. So I guess it's one of those things I need to end up using it. And if it runs out, fine, then I enjoyed using it. But I usually don't typically use them, but I like that they're there. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. This number 6 Yovo nib performs very nicely, as you would expect a Yovo nib to perform. It is a stainless steel nib. If you push it really hard, you can get a little line variation out of there, but nothing too drastic. The ink flow on this medium nib is decent. And in regard to reverse writing, it is a little sharp, but gets the job done. R-E-V-E-R-S-E. Yeah, okay, I spelled that right. And in regard to some fast writing, the feed keeps up well. So here is the Delmoon Avitar. Like I mentioned during the review, if you are looking for exquisite craftsmanship, then this probably isn't the pen for you. But if you're looking for something that's basically like an entry-level Raden and Eggshell pen that you don't mind that it looks great from afar, but if you look up close, there's just a few different issues and that doesn't bug you, then this is a perfect offering for you and something that would be very interesting to add to your collection. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.